Welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life, with psychologist and author of over 75 books, Dr. Barry Weinhold.
Welcome back, everyone, to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life with Dr. Barry Weinhold. My name is Ashley Ross from 321 Media. Dr. Weinhold, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great again. I always look forward to these. I don't prepare for them. I wait until something hits me in the shower, or I'm cooking my breakfast, and that has to go on the podcast. And so I never plan the whole thing ahead of time. I just wait for inspiration to hit me wherever it happens, and
I think that's the best way.
that seems to work fine.
Yeah.
If you ask me what I'm going to say next month, I have a general idea, but I have no idea how I'm going to say it in what order and anything like that. It's just going to have to come to me, and I trust that. I
Yep.
trust that will happen, and I don't have to, go into long hours of preparation for the podcast. And I trust myself. I trust that I will know what to say when I'm called upon to say it.
That's a really important skill to build. I think a lot of people don't, when they think of, speaking in front of people or, public speaking skills, they think, oh, it requires all this prep time and a lot of the extra, really tactical things that you have to do. And a lot of it is just being able to listen to yourself and the things that, come up while you're in those moments and being able to communicate them well. It's really not much harder than that,
Trusting yourself. But I had to learn this the hard way. As a professor, I used to prepare almost word for word what I was going to say.
Oh, man.
Into hours and hours of preparation for my classes when I conducted them. And then one day something unexpected happened, and I didn't have time to prepare, and I went in cold.
Mhm.
And it was one of the best classes I ever had.
Yeah. Spontaneity really helps
Yeah.
have, great questions get asked, and
Right.
people seem to be able to fill in the gaps a little bit more than if you already created the whole structure,
Right. So you have my permission to ask any questions anytime. If something comes to you and you say, hey, I just got a question for you about this, feel free to jump in.
Wonderful. I appreciate you making space for me to do that, because this is your podcast, but it's really wonderful to be able to be here alongside of you and be able to interact and kind of experience and learn along the way as well. So thank you.
Well, I thought about your husband too. You had you must be grateful you had a husband who was willing to, sacrifice some of his career to take care of your children. So,
Yes.
Kudos to him. I wrote a book about him.
Yes.
Not him specifically, but people
Dads.
like him.
Mm-hmm.
And I titled it "The Male Mother."
Mm-hmm.
And because I had a lot of my young male clients who said to me, now that I'm a father and my wife had this child, I don't know what my role is. I don't know what to do. So in the book, it lays out what the role of a father and a husband is in raising kids, and I called it the male mother because Robert Bly, one of the famous leaders in the men's movement, coined that term at one point, but he never really followed up on it and did much with it. So I picked up Robert's term and used it to illustrate what I was hoping would reach young men who who want to do what your husband did, but maybe also need a little bit of instruction about what to do. So the book is a kind of a how to do it book.
I think it takes some courage because a lot of the times, especially as mothers, we kind of go into autopilot and we may take over certain roles that our husbands should be filling automatically because they maybe just don't have the confidence or the natural inclination to know where to step in, and they also want to honor us as mothers and not, take away. So it can be a delicate balance, and I think it's really important to encourage. It's not something that society does alone, so that also
Yeah,
creates a lot of tension.
yeah,
But my husband was born to be a dad, and he's always loved kids, so
yeah.
it was a great time for him, and I think he hopes that we eventually get to switch back. But as you said in our last episodes, I think it's important for our son right now to have some mother bonding that we missed out on a little bit
Yeah,
earlier on.
it's just an
Mhm.
inadvertent thing that you can pick up. And that's the other good news is that whatever, I mean, I think in listening to this, the tendency might be, and you might help me see if it happened to you, start to feel guilty. Oh God, I didn't do this. Oh my God, I didn't do that. But
Mhm.
it's never too late
Yeah.
because if you see what the need was that wasn't quite met, you can then fill that in later.
Mhm.
And obviously, with adults, what I do is a four-step method, which is what isn't working in your life, where did it come from, and what was missing that should have happened that didn't, or what did happen that shouldn't have happened, and what can you do now to fix that? What can you do to finish the unfinished part of that? Because
Mhm.
the way the natural learning style of human beings is anything unfinished will continue to repeat. So
Mhm.
anything that's repeating in your life, you automatically know that something is unfinished about it, and then you do a little bit of work with where did that come from, what was unfinished, and what can I do now to finish it.
Yeah. So
So
what do
it's
we have
never,
this week
never,
that ties into that?
yeah, it does, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's never too late to go back and pick up something that you might have missed because of life's circumstances. Life happens, and at times you can't be the most consistent parent that you want to be. And but what happens in situations where parents actually just don't even pay much attention to the needs of their child, particularly these early bonding needs. Uh, the child feels a sense of neglect, and the neglect comes out in a lot of different ways in people's lives. As I said earlier in one of my earlier episodes, that children are infants, or even toddlers or young children or teenagers who are grow up in a family where both parents have careers often feel like they're second best and that they're sort of in the way, and that can have long-term effects on their own self-esteem and their own ability to mobilize themselves in their life as an adult. So the neglect part of it is a big part. And when I started working with clients, I think I mentioned this, that they had symptoms of trauma, but no actual abuse or any kind of major incidents that they could recall. And usually people can recall abuse. They can't recall neglect. That's the hard part. And so what I did is I developed a 40 question uh, questionnaire to see if it helps people remember things that didn't happen to them that probably should have. And just even taking this will give you. I see a couple of them are marked with are they're outlined, and because these are things that are very common in many people. Did your mother or any primary caregiver fail to tell you that they loved you? Uh, so it's. I grew up in a family like that, and the effect on me, I know, was extremely hard. And I finally was able to handle that with my parents. I started telling them I loved them. And at first it was uncomfortable for them because they're good old German Lutherans, and they didn't. German Lutherans don't talk about their feelings very much. And so eventually they started repeating back to me when I'd say, I love you. First it was kind of a muffled, I love you too. Blah, blah, blah. And then eventually they started initiating that with me. And and then from then on, we never greeted or parted without "I love you." And it became a regular part of our connection with each other. And it made a huge difference to me, and I think to them as well. They just didn't know how to do it, and they felt uncomfortable. It was never done to them, probably. So,
I
uh,
think that it's interesting. We have a Finnish culture here
oh
where
yeah,
I'm located, and my family and my husband's family are fit part Finn, or a large part Finn. And my husband had up until a couple years ago never told his mom that he loved her. And I think also maybe not even just culturally, but like from where we're located, but based on the fact that he was a boy. Boys aren't really encouraged to tell their mothers that they love them after a certain age. So it was interesting too.
and this is the one number 8, hugging and picking me up. I have a picture of me, like I may have been 2 months old, and my mother is holding me, and instead of holding me like this, she's holding me out here. Very, very telling that it was very uncomfortable for her to hold me close to her, and hugging is was not. And again, I broke that one with my parents. And one day I went home, and my dad stuck out his hand to shake my hand, and I walked right by his hand and hugged him. And it was like hugging a tree at first, but eventually he got warmed up to that and started hugging me back. And so again, none of our greetings when I left were without hugging. And so that those are two that were important for me. And then the number 9 was important for me because my mother uh, turned me over to a babysitter at a week and separated me much too soon. Uh, and I was a failure to thrive baby for a while. I weighed 6 pounds at birth, and at 8 weeks, I weighed 5 pounds. So, fortunately, an intervention occurred, and I was able to recover from that. But that's how some babies die: is that they just give up. That they don't feel like there's any connection with a mothering one, and they die. And I could have died if there hadn't been an intervention. I was sent to live with my grandmother and my aunt, who were very loving and nurturing people. And I stayed there during the week, and I was just with my parents on weekends.
Wow. I think that
So,
there's some more awareness now too of postpartum when it comes to
postpartum,
mothers, and
yeah,
there's a little bit more attention paid for cues for that to make sure babies don't end up in the failure to thrive scenarios.
yeah, yeah. There's more consciousness and awareness of that now. So anyway, I want to talk about the second stage of development, which is the one where it ends with what some researchers call the psychological birth of the self, or the authentic self. And what has to happen for that to occur? Now, some of which I've talked about briefly before, but I want to go over some things. So put that diagram that we had up in the last there it is. And I'll look at trauma during the separation stage and the effects of all that. Because again, uh, if the child's needs are not taken seriously, or they're misunderstood, or not treated with respect, the child develops anger, because that's what happens when we don't get our needs met. We get angry, but they have no way of really having any power behind that. And so they end up usually creating a false self that they finally give up. And I'll talk about how that happens, uh, and how you can avoid that by not a lot of different things. There are a few things that parents need to learn about that. So in the toddler stage, in order to facilitate the transition and maintain the sense of being connected with themselves from the inside out, which the secure bonding would do. It knows they know that they are bonded to somebody. They feel secure. They feel safe. They don't have to be hyper vigilant about uh, worrying about somebody not meeting their needs. And then they go into the toddler stage, and their next big job is mastering the world around them, their immediate environment, and this becomes their work. And they do this on a day-to-day basis, 24/7. As long as they're up and around, they are learning about trying to master the environment around them and doing everyday things to do that. And unfortunately, at first, what they do is they put everything in their mouth when they find something new, and so that's a little bit challenging sometimes. But obviously, as you said earlier, one of the most important things is kid-proof the house. Put everything up where the kid can't reach it, so you don't have to be saying no as much. And then it is required in this time to give your child twice as many yeses as nos. You need to be their cheerleaders and help them in their wonderful day-to-day journey of having this love affair of the world to master everything that they have to do around them, where they learn to eat, they learn toilet training, they learn how to actually find out whether something is safe or not on their own. I mean, when a child exploring sometimes sticks their finger in a light socket, and of course they get shocked, they pull back. What's the next thing they do? They stick it back again. Why? Because they want to make sure they got it. They want to make sure they've mastered that. So once they do it again and the same thing happens, no, never do that again. So it's a whole trial and error process that they're involved in. And parents have to respect that and understand that every time the child has a meltdown, it's simply a frustration about not being able to master something that they hoped they would be able to. And it doesn't mean they should be sent away to their room or some corner to think about why they melted down, because at that age, a toddler can't think about that. They don't know. They just know that they were trying to do something and it got too hard and they weren't able to do it, and they're frustrated and they might uh, throw a tantrum over that because they're angry. And so learning how to respond to those kind of things is extremely important. Like, just not to punish, but to understand. I see how frustrated you are. You're trying to learn how to do this, and you're having trouble doing it. Can I be of any help? I mean, that's the kind of response that a parent should give. But often that isn't the response that parents do. And obviously, because they get triggered by the angry response of their kid, and they may then start to treat them the way they were treated when they had an angry response when they were exploring their environment. So uh, it's again a challenge for many parents to realize that whatever didn't get finished in their childhood is going to come up with their kids, usually at the same age or around the same issues. And so being aware of that, again, if you can name it, you can tame it. If parents can become aware of that and realize that, and I always say, if a parent is having an emotional reaction, take a time out before you discipline your child and get yourself regulated. Then you can begin to talk to your child about what needs to happen. Um, and then one of the biggest things that happens about the near the end of this period is the children learn, or their brains are set up so that everything is black or white, right or wrong. It's what is called a splitting response, and they have to be helped through that. And they can be helped through that by parents saying, well, if they say, well, if you can't do this, let's think of two or three other things you could do. So helping them think about more than two options, either one or the other, and helping them to develop the thinking power to have break through that. Because what happens is people get stuck in that, and then as adults they act out this way. And we're seeing so many adults who are polarized in their thinking. It's either one way or the other way. It's either this way or that way, or it's black or white, or it's right or wrong. And I see that as just simply not getting through that stage of development and being stuck there. And so that's what when I work with people with that, I try to help them develop at least three options for everything they have to encounter. Uh, so that those are kind of things about uh, basically just showing up, kid-proofing the house, maintaining respect for the child about their needs, understanding their needs when they express them, and when they get angry, what that's about. And then it also involves helping them because during that stage, there's a natural narcissistic stage. And so help them develop healthy narcissism. I have a chart up here that actually I got this some from a number of sources, but here are the ways that you help people develop or facilitate natural narcissism. And I mean, think about whether any of these were things that you likely got from your parents. Uh, uh, Supporting your attempts to be separate and autonomous instead of being threatened by them. Reacting calmly to any aggressive responses like temper tantrums. Allow you to develop and follow your natural curiosity safety during each developmental stage rather than overprotecting or requiring you to do things to please them. Be available physically and emotionally when you needed them, permitting you to express conflicting and ambivalent feeling, because a lot of times in this toddler time of exploring, there's a big internal ambivalence that occurs. For one, they love the comfort of the attachment and the bonding, and yet they have an internal urge to be separate. And this is an internal struggle that children have, and they have very conflicting feelings. Sometimes they'll want to be close and cuddle, and sometimes they'll push away if you want to cuddle with them. And that's this internal split that they have. And so helping them understand what that might be, and helping them treating their ambivalent feelings seriously and with respect, and helping them know that they're struggling with this, and that it's okay to struggle with it. It's okay to have those feelings, and that eventually they'll figure it out. And then I think I put down the last one here: use time in instead of time out. I've alluded to that a bit, but I want to say a little more about this, because one of the most common things that parents do when they get upset at what the children's doing that's upsetting, uh, they then uh, order the child to have a timeout. Well, that's absolutely worst thing you can do to a child, because child does not know what's going on with them. They don't know why they're acting the way they are, and they certainly don't know why you're sending them to their room or to the corner. It doesn't, it's not, they don't have the cognitive structures to do that yet, to understand that. And so it's totally useless, and it's harmful, because basically what toddlers need when they're upset is they need comfort and they need closeness instead of isolation and no comfort. And so time in is the better option. Have them come and sit near you, or have them come and sit in your lap if they will, and accept their feelings, and not try to talk them out of it, or make them bad for feeling the way they feel. And so when parents use time in, they don't destroy that kind of sense of safety that has built up during the first stage. And they can destroy that by not understanding what the need of the child is. The need of the child at that point, when they're dysregulated, is they need help in getting regulated emotionally. And the way they do that is they go back to being bonded and attached to the bonding and attachment object, and be close to that person. That helps them relax, helps them basically re-regulate themselves emotionally from the inside out. And you don't have to do much Maybe just some few kind words that I understand you're frustrated. I understand that this is hard for you, and give them some sense that you're not punishing them for feeling the way they are, but you're supporting them, and you want to do anything you can to help them uh, with that internal struggle they have. So those are, I mean, there's other thing. Child-proof your home. I set appropriate and safe limits without use of shame or physical punishment. Physical punishment does nothing to help a child, and in many countries, it's now illegal. It isn't in this country yet, but it should be. Parents in Scandinavia and probably in Finland aren't allowed to slap their children or physically punish them. It gets them in big trouble. So anyway, if your parents rejected, let me just leave that on there just for a minute. I want to read that last sentence. If your parents rejected your authentic self, you created a false self by becoming what they and others wanted you to be. And you did this to earn and keep your parents' love. Actually, this is not love. This is a form of conditioning that is called love, but it's not love. Love is really something that's unconditional. And usually that form of love has conditions. I will love you if you behave the way I think you should. So that is not a good way to parent a child, particularly try to create a child who's authentic. Now, creating a child with an authentic self is a challenge because if you were not raised that way, you will see what they're doing to maintain their authenticity as against what you think is the right way to parent them. And you have to think about, is this what they're doing? Is this supporting their authenticity, or do I have to make them support my inauthenticity? And so that to me is a big part of what we're trying to do. And so if the child reaches age 2 or 3, we hope that they've had enough support of their feelings and enough cheerleading from their parents, enough respect for the process they're going through, that they develop what is called the birth of the psychological self, the authentic self. And this is the foundation then that will carry them through the rest of their life. Now, my research and others suggests that this is still a rare occasion. Only about 5% of toddlers ever reach this kind of sense of psychological birth. So for most of my clients, they're still trying to finish that in their adult relationships. And that's usually the source of most conflicts they have. But they don't know that until they help them see that. So anyway, we went over a lot on this one again, but lot to bring in. And so, any comments or questions or anything?
No, I think this was wonderful. I feel like there's so much to digest, and again, so much of it is just awareness. And as you said, there's lots of steps in here that you can do, especially in this toddler stage. And interestingly enough, I just had my son's 15-month appointment, and our handout that we took home had a lot of the things you touched on. So it's great to see that these
Yeah,
things have trickled down.
it is trickling into the
Mhm.
mainstream, and I'm happy to see that.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. So got to work on those yeses and less nos. That's the
yeah,
goal.
that can be a little bit challenge, but again, every time you say no, you can't do this, but here's 2 other things you can.
Hmm.
That's how you can do that. Very
Yep.
easy.
I got to increase my score, my yes score.
Right.
Awesome. Well, what are we looking forward to? You've touched on a little bit, but what are we looking forward to next month?
Well, the biggest challenge I think is that to try to break out of what is familiar, which are the familiar intergenerational patterns of interaction in families that actually, unless you grew up in an authentic family, these patterns generally prevent authenticity from happening, and they have to be changed. And so I'm going to look at how to identify them, what they are, how name them so we can tame them, and then what you can do to change them. So there'll be a lot of suggested homework for people. And the next one about there, I have a couple of written exercises I'm going to put up there that people can download and take on their own to see if they can identify their family patterns and identify what to do to change them. So I'm excited about that. I have a lot of
Yeah.
material written. Uh, well, actually, I started writing a book about this about, oh, how long ago would that have been? 30 years ago. And it went through like 6 different titles. It's still in public in print now. And the original book is pretty much the same. I'd added some new content to it every time I revised it, but it's gone through that many revisions, and it's pretty up to date.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really looking forward to that too. I think it's always great to have such tactical things that not only can we listen to the podcast, check out the website, because I think that one actually is possibly available. You can find that on the website, more information about that. But also just having some tactical homework to have available to actually, learn about a thing, become aware, and then go do go do the
Yeah.
hard work.
Well, I'm hoping that people who hear that or watch this podcast either way get some ideas about things they can do
Yep.
that makes their life work better.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for everything that you do and for today's work.
Thank you.
And we will see you next month.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have a lot to say about family patterns.
Wonderful. Until next time, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
For more information, please visit the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership at CICRCL.org or click the link in the show notes.